Well, when we talk about growing the game, we've got to come back now to the Greatest Rivalry Series. Get down to business. Look at the nitty gritty of it all.
Yeah, that's right.
Rennie v Erasmus. Dave Rennie's coaching record against South African teams, both in Super Rugby and at the top level in international rugby, is pretty outstanding. 4 games for the Wallabies against South Africa when he coached the Wallabies. 3 wins, 1 loss.
That's right.
At a time where I would say the Wallabies really had to punch above their weight to get those wins. He was an underdog in those games. 24 games against South African teams in Super Rugby for the Chiefs. 18 wins, 2 draws, and 4 losses. Pretty unbelievable record there. What is it about Dave Rennie coach teams that puts the fear in South Africa, and what will he be looking to replicate from those wins in this upcoming series?
I think he's a great thinker. He's been able to outwit the tiger or the bok, and been able to implement a game plan that very quickly can nullify their strengths and counter it with something that the South African teams don't want. To have a 75% win record in both his Super Rugby games and international games against the Springboks suggests that that we're onto something here with Dave Rennie. He also overcame those pretty dominant periods for the Bulls and the Stormers in Super Rugby, and was able to pull an iron out of the fire in his Wallabies tenure when he selected Quade Cooper, who stepped up to kick the winning goal against South Africa at Seabus Stadium on the Gold Coast. And he just has that ability to pick players and to implement something that goes against what the Springboks wants to do. And it creates a frustration from a dominant Springbok side who, let's be honest, in each one of those occasions have been pretty used to getting what they want. And right now they're pretty used to getting what they want. So that's why I'm excited about for the Greatest Rivalry Tour is Dave Rennie potentially giving the Springboks what they don't want.
I kind of did a bit of a deep dive into what was the DNA of Dave Rennie coach teams in those periods against South Africa, and the players he would pick. And a hallmark of those 3 wins with the Wallabies was just the success that they had at the breakdown. In particular, the game in Brisbane at Suncorp. It was the second test in 2021. Like, Michael Hooper had one of the games of his life, and they were all over them at the breakdown. I think Samu Karevi made quite a few turnovers as well. They didn't allow South Africa to get any front ball. I think there was something like 10 turnovers at the breakdown that day. And it seems to be the big blueprint for how to get across the Springboks at the moment. You've got to really slow down their ball. And I find it interesting as well. You look back at those Chiefs teams that were very successful. The selections are a bit different to what you'd expect. You look at the 2 finals there. He had Sam Cane in his squad, and he left him on the bench for Tanarau Latimer, a guy who's just excellent at the basics, really good at cleaning out attacking rucks to get that quick ball. Whereas at the time, Sam Cane would have been more a flair kind of Lincoln open side. He evolved his game obviously later on as he came into his All Blacks career and stuff, but the nuts and bolts players that Dave Rennie seems to pick are a hallmark of the strategy he has for, I think, beating the likes of the Springboks. And you're seeing it again now, I think, with Luke Jacobson and Tupaea being selected in the back row. I don't think anyone had Luke Jacobson as a starter for these Nations Championship games. For me personally, I was expecting Peter Lakai, maybe with Tupaea and with Surveyor, but Jacobson really stood out in that series. He's a workhorse. He's really physical, but it's taken a while for him to get there. He's a guy like in 2019, he got into that All Blacks World Cup squad. Didn't play any of the games because of injury, but I remember watching him in the Chiefs that season. It was predominantly, I think, at 6, which is where I probably see him as more of a 6.5 kind of player. But he has cannons for shoulders, man. Like, he can hit. And this is the kind of player you'd want in your back row against the Springboks. And it was the same for, I was looking at it, with the way he transformed, the way Liam Messam played. I think before Dave Rennie at the Chiefs, Liam Messam had obviously come from the sevens background. He was quite a rangy flanker, really good with ball in hand in the wider channels. But Dave Rennie really tightened up his tight game, with his physicality, his hit and rucks. And that year, 2012, he went from, in that first series that I think Steve Hansen selected the squad for, in his first series for the All Blacks, Messam didn't even make the initial squad, but came in as an injury replacement. And he had transformed the way he had played, the way he was playing at 6 with his physicality, more like a Jerome Kano kind of player. And that was all under the guidance already. And I think he cherry picks guys that he sees potential with and fine tunes those nuts and bolts, which is I think what we're seeing with Jacobson.
Yeah, totally. I think that's pretty much spot on. He has this uncanny ability of taking guys that are good, that have a lot of potential, and making them into great players. And I think a lot of that, I have no experience with Dave Rennie. I've not worked under Dave Rennie myself, but he strikes me as the kind of guy that understands who he wants, what type of player he wants, and he'll pick a player and he will bring this this incredible clarity to the role, and just say, I need you to do these jobs, but I need you to do them incredibly well. And when players have that kind of clarity, it's amazing what you can get out of someone when they know exactly what they have to do. And I can see that in some of his other fringe selections for this tour as well, with Ethan Blackadder. He has a very clear scope of what his role will be, which will be to carry hard, make tackles, and hit breakdowns at 100 miles an hour. And even back to the Liam Messam example, that's another case of a guy who was probably a bit more freestyle, was used to ranging and doing things as he kind of probably saw fit. But if you can narrow his scope and tell him exactly what he's good at and exactly what he needs to do, you can shape a really great rugby player who has loads of potential into someone that is beyond good. They're great. So he gets in touch with people, and he connects with them really well, and provides clarity that makes people understand what it is they need to do, which for 80 minutes, and go hard.
He seems to connect with the players as well on another level. I do know a couple of lads from the Glasgow Warriors, from his time there. They said similar things, like a really high trust individual, really focused on clear roles, and if you did it well, you'd be rewarded. So getting on to the squad he's picked, 10 extra players from the Nations Championship, a couple of new caps in there. What do you make of the squad, and who's going to be, do you think, the big movers in this selection debate as the tour goes on?
Yeah, I think with the 10 extra players that have been added, I think we first have to understand that a lot of these guys are going to be getting opportunities through the midweek games against the URC sides up front, and their role will be to challenge the core group that they've selected, the ones that played 3, maybe 2 games in the Nations Championship, and say you've got to press these guys for spots. You've got to take on these South African teams and show us why you deserve to be starting in the first test, because they'll be telling everyone nothing's for granted. Just because this guy's played 3 games doesn't mean that he is going to start the first test. You all have an opportunity to play your way into the All Blacks, and you've got 3 games to do it. The ones for me that stood out were selecting 3 halfbacks, meaning that Kyle Preston's going to get more game time. He got 0 in the Nations Championship, and I think to understand where his worth is, he's going to be playing a lot of rugby in those first 3 games. But Ethan Blackadder, I really liked his selection and called that kind of early, that he fits the mould of what we would expect this All Blacks team to want and need. The new captain, Samisi Tupo Tailoa, he is big and moves bodies on both sides of the ball. He's a massive unit and will play a counter to a Jasper Wiese kind of role where he'll just carry all day, double-digit carries, and not take a backward step on defense. He actually has a really high turnover rate as well, really great over the ball, which you expect some of the bigger loose forwards to be more just running straight lines, whether it's forward or back, but he's actually really good at on the groundwork as well. And then the other ones were kind of expected to me. I didn't actually expect Emoni Narawa to make the squad, given that he hasn't played a lot of rugby recently. But he's been a part of the All Blacks system for a few years now, and they'll understand sort of what element he brings. But I would have personally almost had picked a more specialist fullback. An Isaac Hutchison was going to be a real wild card, but in 12 months' time, he could very easily be in conversations for an All Blacks jersey. And if you want to understand what someone's medal is, the Springboks tour is the perfect place for it.
Touching on Emoni Narawa, I reckon he's one of the guys that could be a big mover in this tour. He's suited to playing against a team like the Springboks, where their kicking game is going to go up. They're going to go after the high balls. They're going to stick it up in the air, because I think everyone recognises this is probably a weakness for the All Blacks, the high ball. Like South Africa got so much change out of them in Wellington last year. And I rewatched recently the South Africa-France game from the autumn, and you just see Cobus Reinach box kick after box kick. Arenza's getting after it. They really exposed Damien Penaud in that game, and that was where they kind of stayed in a game where they kind of had no right to win. They had a red card in the first half. France had all of the attack in possession probably for the first 65 minutes of the game. They only stayed in it via like an individual try by Cobus Reinach, but they stayed in, and then eventually the momentum swung, and sure enough, they were able to score 3 really quick tries. And that's the danger of the Springboks. You can dominate them for 70 minutes, but they'll never go away. So what do you reckon they'll be targeting on this All Black side, and what's New Zealand's weakness here? Because for me, the high ball is a big one.
Yeah, I think they're going to be targeting the aerial battle, especially in the first couple of games. They're going to want to test them out there. New Zealand haven't seen a lot of it over July. France didn't kick to them. Italy didn't test it, and Ireland barely tested it at all. They've obviously employed the new method around the aerial box kicks, where they're now sort of sending the winger back to chase that, so that they're almost running alongside the person that's chasing, leaving the fullback to sort of hold off, and then as that ball sort of comes down, the fullback can attack it and bring it back from there. So I'll be interested to see how that starts to work through for the All Blacks. I feel that the Springboks will also try and identify that they'll identify that this All Black defensive system isn't fully set yet. They haven't really been challenged in certain areas, and they'll be using their physicality to try and just create cracks, create chinks in the armour. I thought what the South Africans did against the English, Scots and the Welsh was they actually identified all the opportunities around the breakdown and made sure that they tightened defences, which then if the outsides come up and look to take space, it creates massive holes across the line where the Springboks can use their speed to cut the All Blacks open. So I'd expect them to keep people honest around the breakdown, and then tighten defences in order to create bigger gaps in the mid and out channels for the All Blacks and see what they're really made of out there. Get some people to make some decisions on the spot that they're probably not used to, and they'll put the ball in just behind, just like Pollard did for Jesse Creel against Scotland. Before you know it, they'll be away, and the All Blacks will be wondering what Plan B is for the defensive setup. So there's plenty of great matchups and great strategies that I think both teams will employ across the series.
I think you make a load of good points there. But I think the main one I saw in particular in that French game, like Madia Jalibert exposed that short side so many times. They'd come off a set piece and they'd truck it up the middle, maybe go 3 phases around to the open side, and then like they've got really good passing halfbacks in Luku, and then previously Dupont and Legaric, but they'd fizz it back to the blind side and catch New Zealand napping there, and France got so much change out of that short side. And I also think, conversely, New Zealand can do the same thing. Watching that French game from the autumn again, there's a number of times where France would crash midfield, go around the corner, and they'd fizz it right back to the blind side, and they got so much change because the All Blacks, the Springbok defence was coming around the corner. So using that big long pass, fizzing pass that Cam Roygaard has, they could use it as a weapon. They did it against France as well, where Roygaard himself scored in that second try he scored against France, where they took it up front, just the pick and goes going down the middle and then fizzing it back to the blind side. It's definitely a weakness in the current All Black defence, but conversely, they can expose South Africa there as well.
Yeah, I agree. I think the tempo that New Zealand's going to play at is probably similar to what the French bring, but they're going to look to be playing a very high octane level of football that will look to run the Springboks off their feet. And what I've seen from like the involvement rates of the wingers so far for the All Blacks is they're going to pop up anywhere with a number of touches, and they'll be breaking down the Springboks defensive system, identifying where their weaker defenders or their slower defenders are, and they'll be moving the All Blacks wingers and outside backs into positions that can isolate those defenders and pretty much once they've got them run off their feet, use their speed to get through the Springboks defence and then feed off each other. Lots of support play, lots of keeping the ball alive. So the Springboks will be looking to nullify that. It'll be 2 on the tackle, 1 down low, 1 secure the ball. Don't allow the All Blacks to offload and regenerate before the breakdown. And trust their defence to hold the All Blacks out and eventually slow the All Blacks down.
Yeah, the wingers have been bloody busy in these first 3 Nations Championship games. The off-the-ball work rate of Will Jordan is something to behold, but touch on another player, Josh Morby, just coming into the squad off the back of a brilliant Super Rugby season with the Hurricanes. He's so busy off that blind wing as well, and I think you can see it's kind of a hallmark early on that the back 3 put probably their GPS numbers must be through the bloody roof, man. And you see it off set pieces as well. The layers to their attack, which we probably hadn't quite seen before. A lot of the time you'll see Geordie Barrett up front, out the back to Ruben Love, who likes to sit in the boot there, but then Will Jordan coming around the back and creating that extra option. And it's creating so much space for Mackenzie's running riot at the moment, man. But it's all of the work off the ball from these wingers that are creating the space for them.
Yeah. The blindside winger has always been the extra man. I grew up as a winger. I was always told that as the blindside winger, you're not out of the play. You create the extra man. That is your role. When there's 6v6, it's just you coming from the blind side to create that 7 makes people rethink who they're taking. Who's your man? Are the shoulders going in? Are the shoulders going out? like where's the space, like pop up wherever, because the more times Will Jordan touches the ball, the more often things are going to happen. And that's part of the All Blacks DNA now, is like you get your hands on the ball, like you don't sit out on the wing. Caleb Clark worked that out pretty quickly after the first match against the French, where he made some really nice touches, and then he got brought on as a sub in the second match. In the second match against Ireland, and he probably touched the ball more in his substitute game for the All Blacks against Ireland than he has in some Test matches in 2024 and 2025. So work rate of the wingers is massive, especially as the forwards are doing such heavy work up front, and they've got guys like Ruben Love and Cam Roigard pulling the strings from inside. They're forming a really nice combination, that back three, with Jordan, McKenzie, and Morby or Clark or Fihe Fingnianofo.
Yeah, there's a lot of pace in the game. The way the All Blacks are playing right now. I looked at the stats for passes per kick under this Rennie team. 13 passes per kick compared to Razor's 2025 season of 8 passes per kick. So they're keeping the ball in hand a lot more. They're not going to the air as much either. The kicks are a lot more like delicate and intricate. Like you're seeing Damian McKenzie putting in these short little grubbers, little cross kicks. Geordie Barrett keep kicking over the top. And I think you'll see a lot more of that as just to hold that Springbok rush defense to try and keep them honest. Putting your Springbok coaching hat on, though, I think they'll go hard at the breakdown. They know that, like, if the All Blacks are getting these, like, 1 to 2 second rucks, they're going to be very, very hard to stop. Like, even for a team as big and as physical as the Springboks, you can't give these guys quick ball. And I'm wondering if that's going to play into their selection. They've got a few jackalers in the team, obviously, with Marks. Jasper Wiese is outstanding over the ball. But we had a new guy, Paul de Villiers, come into the Springbok team in the Nations Championship. Got called up on the day of the England game where Siya Kolisi was out injured. But he ended up playing, I think, all of the minutes in that Nations Championship and was absolutely outstanding. Man of the match against Wales. He's a bit more of a Heinrich Brousseau kind of mold player. Not necessarily like a big line-out option, but absolutely lethal at the breakdown. And I wonder if Rassie is going to turn the chapter on this current team and potentially pick him ahead of Kolisi. Now, the counter argument could be that, you know, they value Kolisi's leadership. He's been the hallmark of this era of Springbok rugby. But on the contrary, he doesn't necessarily need to be on the field to bring that leadership. And if de Villiers is that good over the ball, this is the series to unleash him, man. Like they're going to want to slow down that All Blacks possession as much as possible.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think you summarised that incredibly well. I think they're at a point where Siya Kolisi, he has a massive influence around the group, and his leadership is without question. But they've got a guy in Paul de Villiers who is just shooting the lights out at the moment, and it probably, rather than say what I think they should do, it'll tell us a lot of where the South African psyche is at around their selection policies at the moment, because I know New Zealand and a number of teams in the past have probably sold a few players short on caps by holding on to somebody else who they felt had delivered so much for them in the past, but maybe didn't acknowledge that there is a window of time where things have to move to the future. And I know that Kolisi will be within the squad in the lead up to the World Cup, but I'd be paying the guy who's right here, right now, in form. And if I was the All Blacks, I would probably fear de Villiers more than I do Kolisi on the field right now. South Africans will hate me for saying that, but yeah, I'm just going to call it how I see it. For me, I'd be picking de Villiers if I was the Springbok coach.
Yeah, I'd be on the same page about that as well. And it's a hallmark of their depth that they, like you said it in one of your videos recently, I think, There is no A, B, C, D team anymore with, I think, the top 4, top 5 nations in the world. They've got so many options that they just slot into the starting lineup, whether they're better or not, and they're functioning as a unit. There's a few other movers that could be there for the taking in this series. I think Paul de Villiers, Jasper's brother, had an outstanding couple games there against Scotland and Wales. I wouldn't be surprised to see him on the bench ahead of the likes of Lou de Jager as an impact player, because he can cover number 8 like his brother as well. I would also say there are a couple of positions where they're potentially vulnerable too. I think they're one injury away at hooker from a serious problem there. The gap between Malcolm Marx and the next guy, I know they've got Johan Grobler, by no means a bad player or anything, but you're talking about the World Player of the Year, a guy who's been playing deep into the last quarter of matches this last season. And obviously Bongi Mbonambi hasn't been selected in recent times. Whether or not he comes back into the reckoning closer to the World Cup, I suspect Razzie wants to look at a few guys to try and give them game time, but may end up bringing Mbonambi back into the fold closer to the tournament. Yeah. Another one, though, that they could be considered vulnerable is 13. Jesse Creel played all the minutes in the Nations Championship. Their alternatives in recent years, they've done away with Lucanio Arm. I don't know why. He was a world-class player, absolutely outstanding, but they've done away with him. And Cannon Moody has been the alternative. Now, he's been a hyped-up player for the last few years, but I think he's mainly a test winger rather than a test centre. And I think if Creel goes down, that maybe leaves them vulnerable in the 13 channel, especially as the leader of that blitz defence. You could argue that maybe a guy like Ethan Hooker could come in and fill that void, but he'd be more of a Dielende, Esterhausen kind of 12 or a winger than a 13. 13 is such a hard position to defend in. Like, do you see South Africa vulnerable in those positions yourself?
100%. Yeah, I think if I was to name 3 players that the Springboks would be very concerned if they went down, one would be Malcolm Marx, the second would be Jesse Creel, and the third would be Damian Willemse. In fairness, I think at the moment, I would struggle to name a world-class 13 outside of Jesse Creel. Somebody who's pure world-class. I think every top test team at the moment appears to have a world-class number 12, but not many teams have a world-class number 13, which kind of speaks to the difficulty and complexity of the position and kind of just how good Jesse Creel is. He's an incredible defender. He's a great attacker, and his ability to communicate, general fitness level is phenomenal. I think any team would struggle to replace their 13, let alone the Springboks with Jesse Creel. And Hooker, big problems if Malcolm Marx goes down. He's also had his fair share of injuries over time, and given that he's been playing in Japan recently, I think that's probably eased up his injury woes to a degree. But I'd also add Damian Willemse into that conversation around if the player was to go down, who would the Springboks be concerned with, because he has a freakish ability to play any position in the back line, and I think he could start in 4 different positions across 4 different weeks and be world class in all of them. So him going down, I think they're always going to have options, and they're lucky now that they've got that ability to not have necessarily an A, B or C team, because they've got a lot of players that are at equal caliber. They just have variations of strengths and weaknesses, and they're just lucky with guys like Creel, Marx and Willemse that they're 3 of the most well-rounded players in world rugby. So you're always going to miss them if they go down.
And Damian Willemse, I watched a Stormers game down at Cape Town Stadium maybe 4 years ago. It's a local URC game, Stormers Lions, and Willemse was playing 12, and my God, this guy was like walking on water. He's like he was by a country mile the best player on the field. He might be one of the most naturally gifted and talented players South Africa has produced in years. 2-time World Cup winner already as well at the age of 26, 27.
He's the youngest player to win 2 World Cups.
Yeah, it's incredible, man. You could see him winning potentially another one, maybe another 2 in his time. Following on from that now, so if you had to name one player from both sides that's going to really be a big mover this series, and you could name it from the provinces, you can name it from the midweek team, from the All Blacks, who do you think we should be watching out for this August?
Yeah, I mean, for me, on the Springboks, it is de Villiers. I think it's going to be super interesting to see what they do with Kolisi and his integration back into the team, given that de Villiers has been so strong. And a lot of that will ride around the performance of the first test. The first 2 tests for me, I think we'll see what selections they make, what influence that has if the results don't go their way. Because as we know in Test rugby, things can change very quickly, and 1 minute you're flying high, next minute you've lost 2 on the bounce, and everyone's calling for names and people to be cut. So that's going to be a very interesting selection piece, and so de Villiers would be mine for the Springboks. And for the All Blacks, I'm actually going to be very interested to see what they do at 13 with Quinn Tupaea. I think Quinn Tupaea has all of the elements to be just like Jesse Kriel and be a world-class 13, and now he kind of gets his opportunity against the best in the world to show everyone exactly what he's made of at this level. And he's been there or thereabouts for a while, but if he has the series that I think he's going to have, then he could easily surpass Jesse Kriel as being the premier number 13 in the world by the end of the series if he was to play to his full potential. And it's going to be a big part of how our attack succeeds, is how Quinn Tupaea plays in that 13 role, because Jordie Barrett's been playing phenomenally well. Ruben Love is going to have Cam Roigard and Barrett outside him, but he could put that final piece of the puzzle, and that All Blacks backline would be electric.
Quinn's been, you got to remember, he's barely played 13. He's always played, I think he's had a couple games on the wing for the Chiefs, but he's a 12 primarily. So he only really got his opportunity at 13 for a couple games last year while Jordie Barrett was still there, but then obviously he got injured, so he moved back in to 12. He's in the infancy of his, because I think 12 and 13, very different positions, contrary to what people believe. Like you're the defensive leader at 13. And I'm interested to see how that evolves with their defense, if he can become an integral leader to their defense. But also, man, like the skill set of Quinn Tupaea is absolutely phenomenal. Like he jackals the ball as good as a 7 does. His hands are phenomenal. Did you see that that quick offload? I think first one in the French test, where before Peter Larkai's try, the quick hands off the quick ball that they got, and then the one against Ireland for Mackenzie's try. I think Ruben Love obviously was just short of the line, but it's just his ability to, in one movement, take the ball and move it straight away. He's got incredible skill set. And yeah, I agree with you. He could be a big mover in this series. You could be talking about him as one of the best 13s in the world by the end of this year, if he does what we think he's capable of. I'll add another name to the mix as well. How good was Ethan de Groot in July? Like, his skill set's gone to another level. Just his ability to get the ball out the back to the boot so fast. Sometimes I'd blink and miss it, man. He's got an incredible skill set, but it's a big challenge for him this month against a Springbok scrum. That could be the key thing that decides the series. If the All Blacks can get parity with the Springbok scrum at set piece, because I think New Zealand has the second best scrum in the world after South Africa. I think that, and they've developed a lot of depth in that position. And I thought for a while there after 2024 end of year tour, Mighty Williams was kind of coming through, and I thought maybe de Groot's going to lose his spot. He wasn't even selected on the bench for a few of those games, but he's really responded outstandingly well, taken his game to another level. I think if he can anchor that scrum, it'll be a big part of New Zealand getting the front football that they need to win this series. I'll add another back rower to the mix from South Africa. I actually think Jasper Wiese might be one of the most underrated players on the planet at the moment. The first few years of his career, I thought he was too ill-disciplined. He was so prone to a yellow or a red card. He could do it for Leicester really well. Great at club level going forward, and pretty good at the breakdown. But in this last season, I think Razzie must have had a word with him since he got that red card last year against Italy, because he's really tightened up that discipline in his game. And I don't think there's any player on the planet I would rather not tackle than Jasper Wiese. He is so powerful, so gnarly, like even more so than even Dwayne Vermeulen was. Like he has this brilliant center of gravity on attack and defense. He's brilliant over the ball. I think he's very, very quietly become a pivotal player for them. And I also think the gap down to the next guy has suddenly emerged in this Nations Championship, because they picked Evan Roos there, who's now not being selected for the series. Cam Hannigan played against England, but you can see he's very raw. He's got all the makings of a really good number 8, but he still needs to work on his discipline like Wiese did himself. If they lose Jasper Wiese, I think it would be a bigger blow than people realise to the Springboks.
Yeah, I mean he's added a bit of maturity to his game, and that's the difference in discipline. Discipline more often than not comes with maturity and people feeling comfortable in the way that they play the game, to know that they don't have to try that little bit too hard, to force their penalty, to force the line speed, to do something off the ball that isn't required, like neck rolls. Everyone knows now that they're being watched by hundreds of different cameras. If you can remove the ill discipline from the game, then you're a long way to becoming a great player. And the All Blacks could take leaves out of that book as well. There's a number of guys who are probably too ill-disciplined right now, which is their worst. Well, it's their biggest enemy. The All Blacks is their discipline. If the All Blacks can keep the Springboks out of the 22 for long periods of time, then they'll stand a fighting chance in the Greatest Rivalry Tour. If they concede too many penalties through ill-discipline, and especially unnecessary ill-discipline, then they're going to find themselves camped on their line. And as we see right now in international rugby, if a team can make it to within 5 metres of the try line, there's a very high chance that they're going to score a try. And you don't want to be standing behind your post for long periods of time in South Africa, because it can get ugly pretty quickly.
100%, man. Yeah, New Zealand, I think, need to keep their penalty count under double digits, even lower than that, I think, because if you're giving away that many penalties against this Springbok team, they'll just maul you into oblivion. So the discipline's going to be really key. To finish on it, a prediction note. 1, what does success look like for the All Blacks at the end of this tour? And 2, what are you backing?
Success for the All Blacks by the end of this tour. As All Blacks fans, you can never shy away from the fact that you expect your team to win, and to win the URC games, the midweek games. We'll be expecting them to win them well, regardless of which teams we roll out. I think it's pretty good for us to. Success will be having a clear idea of who our top side is by the end of this tour. I think at the moment there's still some question marks in key positions, and it's a great opportunity to test yourself against the best of the world and iron those questions out. And I think success looks like winning the series. New Zealand's got to look to win the series. They've got to look to jump the start and try and get the first win away and put something to the South Africans that they haven't seen for a while, which is a loss and a decent loss on home soil. No one's done it since the Wallabies last year, but it proves that it can be done. And yeah, I think my prediction for the series is 3-1 to the All Blacks. Yeah, I believe they can do it in the first test, which I think will invite a reaction, and I think that they can win both of the Johannesburg tests, the one at Ellis Park and the one at FNB, and when all things go to Baltimore, yeah, get the job done 3-1.
Yeah.
Dave Rennie 75% all the time.
Very consistent.
Yeah, there's something in there.
I take another approach to it. I think this tour it has huge meaning, obviously. But the pinnacle is still the World Cup. Dave Rennie, I think, he's got 6 cracks at South Africa before next year's World Cup. We all know where the roads are leading to. This quarterfinal in Sydney. Somehow World Rugby have managed to put the number 1 and 2 team in the world once again on a collision course in a quarterfinal. It's great for guys who have a ticket to it, but obviously we would prefer the better teams to go deeper. I think Dave Rennie, he's going to experiment over the course of the series. He's going to try a lot of new players, and he's going to figure out a game plan that can work to win that one game in the quarterfinal. I think that's the one that ultimately really matters. That being said, any All Blacks game has meaning, and any Springbok All Black game has meaning. I reckon New Zealand will catch South Africa out on that first game, the first test. I think they'll take them, but that'll spark a reaction for the rest of the series. And I think South Africa will go out there and win the series 3-1 off the back of losing the first test. I also think the Stormers and the Bulls could give New Zealand a real scare in those opening games. The Bulls, very, very cohesive unit. They've got Emoni Narawa, who pretty outstanding in that game against Scotland. He's not been picked in the squad, so he'll be available for that game. I wouldn't be writing off any of these provinces. They're pretty special teams. So I reckon either one of the Stormers or the Bulls will get a win against New Zealand, and I'm going to say 3-1 South Africa after the All Blacks win that first test.
Yeah, that's pretty good. I think it's going to be a huge attrition rate for the All Blacks. I think people forget just how much these tours take out of the body when you've been asked to back up game after game, and while they've done it at club level for a while, playing a midweek game and then being asked to turn around to play a test, the first test, for example, in Johannesburg, it was going to be a big call. So using the squad in a smart way is going to be pretty key for the All Blacks, because big injuries, key injuries up front. New Zealand, the All Blacks, unfortunately don't have the same level of depth to cover that as the Springboks do. And if we're taking head counts by the second test, then in the third and fourth test could be a tough ask for the All Blacks. So I can definitely understand how you got to that point.
Yeah, 100%, man. Brendan, it's been unreal to finally do this.
Yeah.
Hopefully we get another crack at this in a few weeks ahead of the first test. But mate, thanks for joining us. I think there'll be many more. Appreciate your work, mate.
Yeah, you too. Thanks very much, and great to catch up and connect over this. This is all great stuff, and anyone that I can speak to that has a shared love for rugby on the same level that I do is always welcome in my household, whether it's video or for a nice ale. So looking forward to catching up soon.
Good stuff, mate.
Yeah.
You take care. Have a good evening.